Hello. Carter's in the car, driving home from Baton Rouge. Little known fact, that Garth Brooks song, Calling Baton Rouge, was not originally a Garth Brooks song. I saw the original artist, Newgrass Revival, at Green Acres Music Park. So he's calling Baton Rouge. Hope everybody's doing well. I see it's 7 o'clock. It's time to get started. Let me quickly share my screen. And we will look at the weekly schedule. So we got one more week. We have two presentations tonight, and then we have two presentations next week, and then we'll be done. All right. So tonight we have Shay, who's doing chapter 11, and Shona, who's doing dropout manual. I believe that's tonight. Let's look at. So that's what we have. If you bother to go in and look at our shell, I have my summer sign up. If you want to meet with me, I have the summer sign up sheet here. I think I have a few dates left on the one for spring. We minted a new doctor today. If any of you know Sherrod Davis from down in the Aiken, South Carolina area, Sherrod got through today. I'm so proud of him. I actually had my coat and tie on today for that. And so he did a great job. So hopefully that will be you before too much longer. Again, I can't tell you enough how important it is to get into the summer with some momentum and come spinning out and get started on this thing when you don't have classes in the fall. It gets hard to self-discipline yourself when you don't have classes. And so just to get as far ahead as you can before we turn you loose. All right. In terms of the leaderboard, we've only have three who hadn't finished their policy analysis, so everybody but three. Good. Thank you for that. Our points are good. We still have the points leaders. They're doing well. If you're down in points, it's time to it's time to pick up the pace. As an old football coach I used to have said, the only man makes a living walking is a mailman. We need to be double timing here. All right, so I will stop. Let me look at the list here. All right. Jay is up. All right, I'll stop my share. Are we ready to present? There she is. I just saw Shay come screaming by. Kathleen, everything's still good with the federal government?
Still have a job for now.
Still,
Can't say it's good, but we're still there.
It's always good. Let me turn that's a good thing. Shay, do I need to turn my camera off so you can share?
Yeah, my connection's coming in and out. I'm trying to work on it. I'm in a hotel. I'm on vacation, so I'm trying to fix it to where I can share my PowerPoint.
Where are you vacating?
Charleston, South Carolina. We're on spring break.
No.
Let me try this. It should work, hopefully. Can you guys see my screen?
No.
Not yet.
Okay. I apologize. Sorry. Now,
Jay, you still with us?
yes.
Shauna, are you ready to go? Can you see if yours will work? There we go. It's working. Yay!
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can we heard somebody. Shauna, are you there?
Sorry, I'm in Washington, D.C. on a field trip. Sorry.
Oh, shot with Charlotte. That's okay.
I'll try one more time. I know Kishana, are you sharing your screen
Yep,
now?
she's got it up going. She's ready to go.
Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
All
I'll
righty.
try to work on my connection.
Okay.
We can't hear you.
How about now?
Yeah, we heard you then.
Okay, so I had the North Carolina dropout prevention intervention manual. So to start off, so it was like, why was this manual matter? Why is it important? So some highlights is North Carolina is trying to commit to trying to reduce dropout rates. The manual provides some standardized guidance for identifying these students and supporting at-risk students and ensuring that there's consistent reporting and that some intervention is taking places throughout the different districts. The purpose and objective of this manual is to standardize dropout definitions for reporting, guide school systems in identifying any warning signs, best practices, and hopefully to promote some coordination to ensure that these students don't drop out or there's a backup plan if they do drop out. What I found that stuck out was when I did some research, it was like 15% was the number of students who start high school in the fall but don't graduate after 4 to 5 years. Some key terms: dropout, a student who leaves the school for any reason other than death before graduation is completed. Graduation rate is our percentage of a group of students from ninth grade till they finish 12th grade or till they finish high school altogether. And our at-risk students are these students that have some academic or behavioral or social issues. So when I went through the manual, it was trying to identify what would be considered a dropout. So I just went with those, I guess, indicators that highlight a dropout compared to not being considered a dropout. So if you are a dropout, this is an individual who's 16 years or older, does not return to school, complete the last year of middle school, but did not enroll in high school by day 20. Is homeschooled but does not actively engage in educational activities during normal school hours. If a student is suspended for a year or 365 days with an option to return to school, but does not return within 20 days, they're considered a dropout. If they're permanently expelled but does not return to school elsewhere within those 20 days, of the next school term, they'll be considered a dropout in North Carolina. South Carolina has some similar things too. You can drop out, and I guess as your 17th birthday comes, you can drop out then. You can drop out at 16 if it's court mandated, especially if you are a working student and the court deems your job being beneficial to the household. But the only thing is you have to keep that job. If you don't keep the job, the court can then mandate you to go back to school. An individual has not received a high school diploma or any equivalency by 21 years old, they're considered a dropout, and you have to be enrolled by October 1st. If you move districts, or if a student moves districts or a state without any known documentation of enrollment, they're considered a dropout. If they're suspended with the option to return back to school, but don't return after the disciplinary period is over, they will be considered a dropout. If you are permanently expelled with no option to return, it will be considered dropout. And if you transfer within institutions that do not offer some type of high school diploma, or GED, or any equivalency, then you will be considered a dropout in the state of South Carolina. Some North Carolina dropout statistics, I found this on the public instruction site. Students drop out most frequently in 10th grade at the highest percentage at 30%, and then 9th grade came behind at 28%. So within the first 2 years of high school, that's when they see the biggest dropout rate. The number of high school students dropping out, they increased throughout the grade levels, but they noticed that the Asian ethnic group had a decrease compared to all the others. Males account for 62% of these dropouts, and it went down, but not significantly. It's still about 62%. Attendance issues are the main reason that was cited for dropout in the state, and they account for 40% of their dropouts. So when it comes to reporting these dropouts, the requirements, so it says all public school units in North Carolina are required to report dropout data from grades 1 and higher to the North Carolina Department of Public Instructions annually. You must submit between October 1st and November 4th of your current school year. And schools must distinguish between dropouts and students who transfer, whether they graduate early or leave to do an alternate program like a GED. I also find that in the statute 115C 1227, it requires that an annual report, whether it's suspension, expulsion, corporal punishment, any placements in the alternate program must be within this report as well, because this is how they are able to track their dropout as well. For South Carolina, we have a manual as well. We start tracking from 7th to 12th grade, and in adult education as well. And I see that North Carolina does the report with adult education too. Ours is due into Power School, and they must do it in the first quarterly collection, which is like the 45th day of school. So they must have all their stuff in at the latest, the 45th day of school. And they too must distinguish between having their students that transfer, graduate early, GED, and then and it comes under our section 596520, which is the penalty to fail to enroll your student. We also have different codes of why a student maybe have dropped out. Besides outside of death, there's different codes, and you have to make sure that the code actually matches up to the reason why the student state that they will be dropping out. I also noticed for North Carolina that you all have in your manual that if a student decides to drop out, once you know that you have to do, or the school has to do an exit counseling session with the student to get some information on why they are considering dropping out. And then it's also a part in the statute where you have to provide them with some other opportunity outside of the school that they're trying to drop out from, an alternate program like a GED program, or some alternative program for them as well. Some early warning signs, so how to identify at-risk students. So like poor grades, failing classes, frequent absences. That's the biggest one. Disciplinary referrals and any social emotional concerns. Also with our social emotional concerns under South Carolina with our statute, with our sections, as far as our students being parents to be penalized for their kids not being enrolled. If a student has some type of disability, was emotional or physical, from a psychiatrist, and they're not deemed fit to be within the school setting, then they could be exempt. We have other exemptions like early graduation or graduation, where a parent won't be penalized for their students not being enrolled. So some interventions and preventions programs, so to help those students that need help, stuff like credit recovery can be done, alternate learning environments, whether it's night school, whether it is some type of adult ed, GED program, family engagements, and mentoring programs. And for South Carolina approach, we see, I don't know if you all know, but Charleston, South Carolina has started in their district this thing called Show Up Together, Show Up to Glow Up. So this is their way of combating issue with attendance, and which will hopefully in return make a turnaround for as truancy and even those students that later drop out. And all of it talks about is how they're reported parents.
Shauna, it's playing, but we can't hear anything.
And it may not, it was playing earlier, but well, with Charleston, South Carolina, they're trying to come back as far as attendance issues, how we give our students our 10 days of excused absences. And so in return, what they're doing is giving parents $25 a week per child for having their kids come into school, and basically with perfect attendance, the parents get this money for their students. So you can have 6 kids and all your kids come to school at that week, you'll end up racking up $25 for each child. So that's their way of trying to hope to fight the issue of attendance and eventually help with dropout rate as well. So that was my short on our manual.
All right, you stop your share now. All right, let's see who's on the screen that I can pick on now. All right. Christian, where are you there? I saw you earlier with your Appalachian shirt on. I like it when people wear their Appalachian shirt. I know to speak slower and use my hands more. So
that helps.
Yeah. Well, it's the same as wearing a helmet and the sign. It's it's just not as apparent. My wife's an Appalachian graduate. High school principal here. I know it's changed a lot since I was high school principal, but there's a number of issues for high school principals that about dropouts, and you need to know all the rules and regulations. And just like when you're the LEA rep for an EC IEP meeting, you need to know what the alternatives are in your district. What do we offer these kids? You're supposed to put them through that exit and see if there's an alternative before they drop out. One of the things you got to be careful of, just like when you're the LEA rep, don't offer something to them that your district doesn't afford or doesn't have. But you're supposed to make a last-ditch effort to do that. So Kristen, feel free to jump in here at any time. Alicia, you can as well. What do your districts do in terms of trying to keep these kids from dropping out?
Well, for us, we if they're 17 and they have little to no credits, then we do recommend adult ed. even that will affect our overall report card for
Well, of course it will.
school.
Yeah.
But however, it's at least we're getting them to
Yeah.
go to the next level, and most of them do go to adult ed. So that is
Yeah.
where our push is. But it truly affects our report card, and that's what's hurting us right now on our report card.
Yeah. Your dropout rate, but it can help you in other parts of your report card as well. Yes, I said that. Think about it for a minute. If you have these kids, especially in the 9th and 10th grade, who are dropping out, yes, it hurts your dropout figure, but it helps your academic figure because they're not there to fail your exams. And so now I know that sounds cold and crass and mean and all those kinds of things, but that's the reality. There was a county in the state of North Carolina a long time ago, back in the early days of accountability, that said, we'll take the hit. We'll take the hit. We're going to move all these kids out. We're going to move them where they can't take these courses that count, and we'll just eat the dropouts. They did that. Within 3 years, they had the highest unemployment rate in the state. Didn't understand what they were doing. They just basically cleaned their high schools out. They had, let's see, 3 at the time. I guess they still do. But they just said, we'll take the hit on the dropouts rather than take the hit on the academic piece where they take the end of course tests and fail. It'll kill us on the accountability end, so we'll just take it on the dropout end. What does dropouts do? They kill the economy. There's a lot more people, more crime, more drugs. Also, when you drop out, how do schools get funded by the state? Average daily attendance, right? And when those kids drop out, you don't get that money. You say, well, we got it already. No, you get it by the month. Remember, it's like on-time payments. They only pay you once a month. So if the kid drops out, the rest of that time, you no longer get the money. And high schools, that can be particularly harmful because you set up and run your classes on the enrollment, then kids start dropping out and you don't get as much money, and the district does not like that. That's one of the reasons why they try to do alternative things, and that's one of the things that Kishana was talking about. We might pay a little money on the side to keep kids in school because we're going to lose a lot more if they don't come. We'll lose basically. I mean, in North Carolina, state money alone, you lose about $850 a month on every kid that don't show up. And so you could spend a little money on the side, to get that $850 from the state. That's exactly how that works. Again, that's kind of hard-hearted, but that's the deal. Christian, what do y'all do again in Sanford? What do y'all do in Lee County to try to keep kids in school?
I would say that push towards adult ed, we have a lot of partnerships with CCCC down here, Central Carolina. Just that, again, kind of just to echo what Alicia had said, and then also what you'd said in terms of the adult ed route being the one-time hit with the dropout rate versus the three-time hit if they're going to fail and then fail and then fail.
Yes. Yes.
That's, it's kind of the whole cut bait method, which again, like you
Yes.
said, sounds harsh.
But it's the
But
reality.
yeah, yeah. So that is just kind of that's what good old Lee County does.
Yeah, you just take your head up front. Now, one of the things you can't do, and I know again this sounds hard, but you can't put all these programs in place and lose money on them dropping out too. Your best bet is to try to push them to adult ed and community college, rather than set up these elaborate credit recovery and Saturday and alternate schools. We had an alternate school in Charlotte, Midwood. And it costs a lot of money to run that stuff. We can say, well, we're keeping them enrolled, but it costs more than $850 a month that you're getting to keep them, to put them into those kinds of things. Again, it's hard, but now on the dropout, you can get hit hard on the report card, but I hate to say it, you get hit harder if your test scores are bad. It's cost benefit analysis. I hate to say that. You take a harder hit on your scores than you do on the dropout rate. So we want to save every kid, but financially it's expensive. You know, if we can get them over to the community college or to adult ed program, I mean, it salves our conscience. I mean, but that's really about the best that we can do. You're not going to get a lot of groundswell activity from the parents of potential dropouts to try to have all of these expensive programs. They just politically aren't viable anymore. I can tell you that. That's kind of run its course in our society. There was a time when we were all about that, running Saturday school and credit recovery and doing everything, running second shift, extended day. We were doing everything in the world. But it's just too expensive. With cuts that we've experienced over the last, since 2011, how many years is that? 14 years. With all the cuts that we've experienced, especially in the last 14 years, something has to go. This is what goes. I know that.
Dr. Lamb,
Yes.
when you speak of like credit recovery, so when I first started teaching, and they had to change some things. My first school district, they did credit recovery, they still do it, and the students paid per credit hour that they were missing, and it was like that was used to pay whatever teacher had to
That's
stay
correct.
with them. And so then that became an issue of like, oh, well, money, you're a Title I school, this, that, and the third. So they end up having to reduce prices in order to stop having the issue with Title I. But I didn't understand it. Like,
That was always a problem, Keyshawn. I'm glad you brought that was always a problem with conflict of interest. We fail enough that we have some extra work to do. We were accused of that. Or the same people that you didn't learn it from the first time, now they're putting them back in there with you again. Isn't that the definition of insanity, to do the same thing over and over again? You had a number of issues, and then people with a financial incentive, you're not supposed to teach or tutor the kids that you teach in school because of that, then that became a problem. And then Title I money, they wanted to reduce the Title I money because of that as well. Now you say, well, Title I's elementary. No, Title I goes all the way through high school, but nobody wants to identify a high school as Title I because that makes the whole district Title I. Alicia and I talked about that the other night. But there's still Title I money. But when you start doing things like that, they start cutting you Title I money. When you start doing those kinds of things. And that credit recovery is a nightmare. Either you got to pay for it or the students. Either way, it's not good. You got to get out of the credit recovery business. It is a political and financial loser. It's just not good. Saturday
yeah, 'cause
school, same
they
thing,
were in the
just not
uproar.
good.
Because it was like the teachers were getting paid for like teaching summer school,
Yeah,
and then they were getting a cut of the
Yep.
money that was
Yep.
coming from credit recovery. So they was like, y'all double dipping, and it was like a whole
Exactly.
issue.
That's exactly right. It's just it's a bad optic. You're getting money coming and going. You're getting money not to teach them the first time. Yeah, you're getting money to teach them the second time. Wait a minute now. You're generating your own cottage industry second, your side hustle here. I mean, it got really ugly. And that's why I said you have to walk away from that stuff. I know that many of you are bright and industrious and love, and you're thinking, I'll figure out a way. Don't. I'm just telling you now, just don't. This is a loser. I hate to say it. God, it sounds so cold and crass, but dropout prevention is just a loser. There's nothing good is going to come at it if you're on the high school side. Nothing good is going to come out of dropout prevention, not for you. It's a financial loser. It's a public relations loser. You need to get them over to the other adult facilities that can handle that. That's really your only option. Otherwise,
The other problem,
it's bad.
the other problem we're having too is with the seat time part of it too, to get the credit. So
Get the Carnegie
our
unit.
kid,
Yeah.
we have kids who pass, but then they don't get, they get an FA. Well, then they're not even eligible for credit recovery. So we
Yep.
deal with that as well.
Yep.
And they've passed the class. So
Yep.
it's a struggle.
Yeah. Everybody understands what a Carnegie unit is. It's what you get in high school when you get units of credit, and Carnegie units say that goes back to the accreditation that says that these kids have sat in the seat for X number of hours in order to get this credit. And a Carnegie unit, I want to say, when last I was a high school principal, they had to get at least 50 minutes a day for 180 days. And that's why we had to do credit recovery on absences. So if you do, it was like 140 hours is a Carnegie unit of seat time. Now, I got called into a junior high in Charlotte back in the day, and I won't tell you which one. And the problem was they had ninth graders, and they weren't getting but 43 minutes of English a day. Let me say that again. They had ninth graders in a junior high, and they had gone a whole year on a 9-period schedule, and were only getting 43 minutes a day of English. And so at the end of the year, they were about a month short on having enough seat time to get a Carnegie unit to give them a ninth grade credit in English. And my wife, the wonderful person, she said, well, what happened to him? I said, well, he didn't have to go home, but he couldn't stay with us. I mean, that's the kind of stuff you get into with attendance, having to run summer school. We had to pay for summer school. We had, as a district, had to pay for summer school for those kids who were a month short on their Carnegie unit time, seat time for their required courses in ninth grade to go to the 10th grade. They didn't have enough in English. They didn't have enough in algebra. They didn't have enough in anything. But English is the one that gets their attention for some reason. But yeah, you got seat time associated with this. And if you want to be an accredited school system, you have to give what's known as Carnegie units, which have requirements. Yep. That's why I said this is just a bad business from top to bottom. I don't want kids to drop out. I'm telling you, it's bad for society. That's why I was talking about the district that had all these kids drop out. Within 3 years, they had the highest unemployment rate of any county in the state. They were number one of the 100 counties in North Carolina. But on the school side, it's just there's nothing good about it on the school side. Nothing good. It kills your grades, kills your money. It kills your resources. We are not now, and we never were set up to handle dropouts. When we got a lot more money back in the 90s, when we had the governor's crime bill money and we had all those different funding sources, even then it wasn't cost effective, but we had outside people paying for it. When all that money went away, it's just a loser. The point of tonight's manual, and thank you, Kishana, for that, is that you need to know all the rules in and around them, so that somebody doesn't use that rule book like a stick to beat you with. But if of course, it's not going to be much if you're smarter than me, but hopefully at some point you'll figure out a way to try to help kids and survive dropouts. But at this point, it's you can't survive drop. You can't. There's just no way to deal with them. You got to get them on somebody else and take the financial hit of them not being there. That's the only way to survive them, because you can't take the academic hit as well. It's just tough. All right, Shay, are you going to be able to show your slideshow tonight?
I shared my slideshow, and I'm not going to show my camera since my Wi-Fi is so spotty, if that's
No, you're
okay.
fine.
And I'll
Look
just
at
do it
that.
this
There
way.
it is.
I truly apologize. I'm sorry
No,
for
you're
this.
fine. Compulsory attendance.
Okay.
This goes. right
I'm
along
trying
with
to
what we're
share.
doing.
Am I sharing the right one?
Yeah, that's perfect. Can you just
Yeah.
slide it up? That's perfect.
Okay, yeah.
Right there. Thank you. So I had chapter 11, and chapter 11 was the instructional program and school attendance is what it spoke about. And the first couple of pages of my chapter talked about attendance, something that's very near and dear to all of our hearts because we are educators. And I'm going to start with compulsory attendance. Children must attend school between 6 or 7 through 16 or 17. Parents party means the state has sovereign powers over persons such as minors, was enacted in 1852, and it was designed to protect children from child labor abuse. Today, compulsory attendance laws are enacted to ensure students receive a suitable education. A number of states also make provisions for exemptions to their compulsory attendance laws for married students who are emancipated from their parents. And so this chapter talked a lot about that. And I know as educators, we deal with attendance. And now truancy is definitely an issue. It's an issue for everybody. All 50 states is what the book kind of made mention. It said this is a challenge for school districts throughout the United States, and we struggle with it all the time. Students are truant when they have an unexcused absence from school without the parents' knowledge. The legal age varies from state to state for school age because every state kind of has a choice of what, maybe 6, maybe 5, maybe 7 that they can start school. And then maybe at 16 or 17, they can drop out of school. And so that kind of varies. States pursue truant students in different ways. For example, Arizona and Virginia impose sanctions on students and the parent. Virginia mandates jail time for parents of truant students. Some states may not do that. Local police are given the authority to check and determine whether school-age children are truant. They can send them to school or arrest those habitual truants, depending on the age group again, age again, because every age is a little different. If you could slide it up for me. One thing that is very hard, and I read my chapter, and I thought about it in education, is grade reduction for absences. That's something that we do struggle with, but we do it to give a consequence to the students. But in my chapter, it kept saying you have to be careful. Excess absenteeism by students poses a challenge for school officials who often resort to grade reductions, and we do. Courts will support reasonable policies regarding grade reduction due to excessive absences if they do not conflict with the state statute. Schools will penalize students for unexcused absences, and courts have been more supportive of this than grade reduction on misconduct. So courts will support you, but it has to be reasonable. When it comes to grade reduction for absences, schools need to be mindful of the severity of the penalties. So you can do that, but you have to be mindful of how much you reduce the grade, and you can't knock the student down so far that they can't come back. So you have to make sure that they have a chance. As I read more through my chapter, it talked about public schools, homeschools, and charter schools. And this was interesting to me because I am a public school educator, but I like to read about the homeschool and the charter school. For homeschool, it said that there were roughly 1.3 million students that are homeschooled. Virtually every state in the nation makes provisions for homeschool students. There are minimum curriculum standards, and they vary from state to state based on the compulsory attendance laws. Minimal standards for curriculum and instruction, length of instruction time, and the number of days in which instruction should be provided is prescribed by state statute or state board education policies. Attendance standards vary from state to state based on individual states' compulsory attendance laws. Most states require a parent or legal guardian who has a high school diploma to instruct the students if they are homeschooled. They usually are in school for about 180 days, required by the law for instruction. Annual progress assessment reports in each subject area is required, so the parent or the legal guardian must produce those. And the burden of proof rests with that parent or that legal guardian for the academic equivalence. So they have to make sure that the rigor is the same as the public school or charter school if they are choosing to homeschool their child. Charter schools. Reading about charter schools was very interesting to me because I don't know a lot about them. And so it was interesting. Public schools that emerged through a contract with a state agency or local school board of charter schools. The charter establishes the ground rules regarding operations of the school. The primary advantage of a charter school is autonomy over their operations. In exchange for flexibility, charter schools are held accountable for achieving outcomes established by the charter, including student achievement as a primary goal. Charter schools are funded by local, state, and federal tax dollars based on school attendance. They are free and do not assess tuition fees. They are still required to meet state and federal educational standards, just as public schools are. Additionally, they are judged on the extent to which they meet achievement goals established by their charter contracts. And there's lots of mixed reviews on charter schools. Some people think they're very good and students do well in charter schools, and other people think they don't do any better than they do in a public school. The way the chapter talked about the funding for charter schools was states fund charter school facilities through dedicated facilities funding, state grant programs, tax exempt bond programs, or state credit enhancement. The method of funding varies among states because charter schools have limited access to local school district tax and bond revenues regarding school facilities. They rely on the alternate sources of funding of public and private funds to cover facility costs. A trend has emerged where they're using abandoned school buildings or use of unused space in existing facilities. Charter schools may also rent facilities at market price to start their school. As the chapter continued, it talked about No Child Left Behind, and we all know about George W. Bush, his idea, and it came January the 8th of 2002 on the heels of Title I Goals 2000, Educate America Act of 1994. The No Child Left Behind was trying to help public education is what it stated. Some of the new and improved things that they said they were doing in the chapter was stronger accountability for results, increased flexibility and local control, expanded options for parents, and emphasis on teaching methods that have been proven to work. All schools should be held accountable for ensuring that the achievement gap between disadvantaged and minority students is close to that of its peers under the No Child Left Behind Act. And as I finished reading my chapter, it talked a lot about accountability. I know each of us have heard this word a lot. I know I heard it a lot through my career. 95% of the school needs to participate in state testing, grades, and etc. Academic achievement standards apply to all students. ESL students need provisions. EC students need provisions. Schools are required to design a plan that enhance their improvement. By 2005-2006, states must have developed and implemented annual assessments in reading and math. By 2007-2008, states must have developed and implemented annual assessments for science. And then by 2005-2006, all teachers were required to be highly qualified. And that means they have a teacher's license, success in passing a test, and that they are knowledgeable of their content area. And we know now that's a little bit different with lateral entry and so forth. The state legislator has a responsibility to provide schooling for all children within the state at public expense. Courts typically do not intervene in curriculum matters. Competency tests are supported by the courts as long as there is no discriminatory intent. Compulsory attendance policies are legally defensible. Parents are accountable and may be penalized for failure to comply. Exemptions to compulsory attendance policies may be justified based on religious grounds. Public schools are required to educate a student as long as they establish a degree of permanency. School districts may establish mandatory immunization requirements under states' police powers, even over parents' religious objections. So all these accountability rules and were in the chapter that I read, and I wanted to put it on my slide. And then the lessons I learned from chapter 11, lesson 1 was about the homeschool rules. Like I stated before, I'm not very familiar with homeschool, but reading some of the rules and the with the parent and guardian, the parent or guardian with the high school diploma, I kind of knew that, but reading that I thought, okay. And then the children were taught for 180 calendar days. I did not know that, so that's something that I did learn about it. And then lesson number 2 about the charter school funding. And that's something that I'm still hazy on. Just reading that, trying to put those pieces together. There are several moving pieces to the funds for charter schools. And reading this chapter, I'm learning some of them. And then my third lesson was policy matters and severity matters. Like you stated, the whole semester, Dr. Lamb, in our class, we have to follow policy. We have to make sure we know policy, and we have to go by it to not get in trouble. And then reading about the severity matters with the different consequences for the absences and the grade reduction. You can't be too harsh or it will cost you because the courts will not back you. Reading some of the court cases in this chapter. And then my question was, how are library books challenged in my district? And under policy 3200, if a parent wants to challenge a library book or any kind of instructional material, what they would have to do, parents who would like to inspect and review instructional materials should make a request in writing to the principal. The principal shall schedule a mutually agreeable date and time for the parent to come into the school to review the materials. And all efforts should be made to schedule the time as soon as possible, but no later than 10 business days for the date of the request. And so basically, if that parent finds a library book or something offensive to them and they review the material, they have to then write in writing to the principal, and then the principal has to then schedule a meeting. And in that meeting, you can scoot up something for me, Kathleen. In the meeting, the principal has to have a committee, and that committee then will review the violations and see if that violates the First Amendment, if they need to take that library book and ban it and take it out of the library, or make an alternate accommodation for that parent. Is what our school district does in Thomasville. And that is it.
Right. A couple of points of clarification. Thank you, Shay. State law is that school districts must provide classrooms for charter schools that get established in their district. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean you have to give them old school? No, it doesn't. You just have to provide them classrooms. So the most common way that most charters get started are in disused mobile units, surplus mobile units. Sometimes districts fight not to give them their buildings, but they will give them mobile units. But they are required to provide classrooms, not anything other than classrooms in terms of capital. That's always the issue with charter schools is getting the finances together for their capital means. Remember, there is no state funding for capital. That's all local. And all the local has to do is give you classrooms, and they just give you a bunch of mobile units, a bunch of trailers. And so they have to try to find alternative ways to get their buildings built. And one of the ways they save money is on personnel. If you're a chemistry teacher, you're probably going to get full salary and benefits and retirement. If you're a PE teacher, you'll be paid as a sub, not a long-term sub. You'll just be paid as a sub, $55, $60 a day. That's where they make their margins. Even though you might be a certified teacher, that's where they make their margins. Charter schools are like any public school. Some are good, some are bad, some are indifferent. It's, as we know, it's driven by many factors other than saying we've got flexibility, we'll be better. No, that's not true. It's according to how you run a school and what you do with them, the quality of the instruction that goes on in the school. I work with a lot of charter schools. Some are good, some are bad, some are indifferent again. Some try to do the right thing and others don't try to do the right thing. And so the mistake that you make is lumping them all together, that they're all good or all bad. That's not the case. Homeschooling. Now that's one of those things that you got to kind of be careful about. Kids don't show up. You go to see about it, and they're claiming that they're homeschooling. Now, I'm not quite sure I understand. If they have filed and got themselves and followed the paperwork and declared themselves that they are a homeschool legitimately. I am not clear my responsibility as their homeschool principal for following up and making sure that they're going to school 180 days. Now, some districts want you to go out and find out things, others don't. There's no hard and fast. I told you the story back in the early mid 90s in Charlotte. We decided, or the superintendent did, that we were going to do tolerate no truancy. Where we were going out and checking, but people in the community could call us. If kids weren't in school, even if they were being homeschooled or in our school, if they saw kids, school age kids out, they could call us and we had to respond. I told you, Tim Newman and I were over on Pegram Street in front of Hawthorne. I don't know what it's called now. It was Hawthorne Junior High back then. It's Health Science Academy or something. It's just a junior high school over on Pegram Street, Hawthorne Lane, right there off Siegel Avenue. We were standing there when the gunfire and people started shooting at us. Yeah, I was not a big fan of running down truancies. I can tell you that even before I got shot at and knocked the knees out of a new suit, pair of suit pants, diving under my vehicle. That's a good lesson to learn. If you're a big person, always drive a big vehicle tall enough you can crawl up under it when the gunfire erupts. That's a handy piece of information to have. But homeschooling, if they're yours, I still don't want to go out and do skip tracing and truancy work, even if they're mine. But if they're not mine, I definitely not going to do that. And I would say if you're in charge at the district level, you need to avoid that. That's another one of them that's a loser. You need to avoid that. You do not need to be going out and trying to find out they're doing 180 days. That's somebody else's problem that certified them a homeschool. I do not want to get involved with that as a district or as a school, and on either end. It's inappropriate, but I remember one of the comedians told a story about homeschooling and said the good news was that he got kicked out of homeschool because he had a romantic relationship with one of the teachers. And they said, well, what's the bad news? He said, well, I was being homeschooled. And I've always thought about that. Pretty shady stuff going on there that I don't want to be a part of. And you'd be best not to get involved in any way at the district level or, again, people bring you this policy stuff and want you to get involved and politicians putting pressure on you. This is one of those, if you can. This is a bullet. Dodge it if you can. You don't want to be in the dropout business. You don't want to be in the truancy business, especially if it links back to homeschooling. You don't want to be in those businesses. There's no winners there. There's no way to win. You have to avoid that stuff at all costs. Nothing good's going to come out of that. I know we're here for kids and we love them and want to do the best we can for them, but there's no winners here. We can't help them and we get ourselves in more trouble than we can get ourselves out of. All right, what's next tonight? All right, we've got one more week with 2 more presentations. Make sure that you get your policy analysis evidence, run it through the process, get us something in TaskStream. I've graded all those. We're all caught up in TaskStream. Everything's good. I saw some things come in this afternoon while I was on the road. I had a proposal defense and a final defense today. I have 3 tomorrow and 3 Thursday. It's that busy season, but the good news for LS is we're rolling again. I think we finished 38 this semester. We kind of we kind of got backlogged, or some other folks did, and so I think that's why I'm over here working now. But I sure do love it being back with my tribe, with my bunch, and so we're moving again. Everything's going good. I did a great job today. Again, my sign up if you need to see me before the semester's out, and my summer sign up's already ready to go, and so get to working. Finish your PA and get to working on your dissertation. All right. Good to see everybody tonight. I appreciate you. I'll see you next Tuesday for the finale. Have a good week.